Nice to be back with you all. And Finney and I thoroughly enjoyed as much of your talk as I heard. And first of all, I love your name. It must be fun to go through life with a name like Finney and Family. It's so utterly charming. And I have to say, your words, "this will pass," echo through the United States from Pacific to Atlantic. We are hoping and praying that come Tuesday, this will finally pass, and without getting into politics, it's been quite an ordeal. Um, it's been extraordinary unhappiness, not ordinary unhappiness. And wish us luck on Tuesday. I hope you're rooting for us. we sure do need it. In any case, and you alluded to my vitamin C, or as you call it, vitamin C, and that's a good place to start with ADD in the families. Uh, the culture in your obviously what's expressed as a powerful force for health, happiness, and longevity in life is the force of connection. And I won't go into the multiple scientific proofs we have of that, but take my word for it, there are many, 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 many. And the only problem with vitamin Connect is people don't take it seriously enough. It's more powerful than anything else. But number one, it's not instant, and we tend to pay attention to what's instant. And number two, it just doesn't get enough press. But if you raise your children in a positively connected atmosphere, regardless if they have ADHD or cystic fibrosis or blonde hair, I mean, what it is, you're going to get a far, far better result than if you raise them in a disconnected atmosphere. And the beauty of vitamin C, which I love you're saying that the beauty of connection is that it's free, it's fun, and it's infinite in supply. As I say, the only problem is people don't take it seriously enough. Well, please do. And then within that context, ADHD can be a disrupting and disconnecting force. So let's say you have a 10-year-old boy. Let's say you're a mom and a dad. I'm going to paint a conventional family, but could be a mom and a mom, or a dad and a dad, or it could be a them and a them. But for this illustration, let's make it a he and a she, and let's say they have three children. I have three children, so we'll go with three children. And let's say there's a sister who's 15, and a younger brother who's 12, and a younger brother who's 10. And let's say the 10-year-old has been disruptive ever since he came out of the womb. And let's say he's sort of earned the reputation in the family of being the one who, it's hard to take him out to restaurants because he's disruptive. It's hard to be with him on holidays because he's disruptive. It's hard to be with him in public places because he's disruptive. He's rude. He's intemperate. He's obnoxious. And his older sister and brother are fed up with him, and mom and dad don't know what to do with him. And what ensues is what I call the big struggle, where and by the way, his no diagnosis has been made other than rude, obnoxious, and don't want to bring him anywhere. What's happened for his 10 years, and as long as he can remember, is he's the one who is the cause of all the problems. And what this creates in my framework of vitamin C, of Connect, is disconnection. So you have a fractured family. And what happens in the big struggle is everybody starts fighting with everybody else. Mom blames dad, dad blames mom, siblings blame the kid. Let's call him Jimmy, the 10-year-old. They blame Jimmy. Jimmy doesn't know who to blame, but he inevitably blames himself. But he's proud and defiant. So it's all my fault. He says it's all your fault, and I'm fed up with you, and I wish I weren't born, and I wish I didn't live in this family, and I don't know why, you all should be arrested by the police. You're cruel and mean and nasty, and I hate you all. And this is how it goes, week after week, month after month, year after year. You get reports from school. Of course, the school piles on, and what they invoke is what I call the moral diagnosis. He is bad. And this goes back throughout history. People, wonder, when did ADHD get started? And is it some newfangled diagnosis? Well, the term ADHD is relatively new, but the symptoms are as old as the ages. There, you can go back in history and find people in the 17th century who fit the description. So the symptoms of distractibility, impulsivity, hyperactivity, have been with us as long as there have been people. It is a genetically transmitted condition, and the genes have been with us forever. The notion that this is some kind of modern contrivance is simply wrong. The symptoms have been with us forever. And after all, the term ADHD is just a shorthand for a collection of symptoms. It's a collection of ways of being in the world. And if you have 6 out of 9 on the DSM, then presto, you have ADHD. It's not as nearly as mysterious as some people make it sound. It's a shorthand way of describing a way of being in the world. And of course, I'm at pains to add the positive side of it, while the DSM only portrays the negative. But until in families, you only and saying, "Want to punish him more? Why don't you?" And then the schools are almost saying the same thing. This is his fault. He needs to shape up. He needs to try harder. You get biblical comments like, "He will not get as many chances for redemption as he gets further in school." His soul becomes at stake, and the longer it goes on unresolved, the more the struggle develops with the school, with the home. Often the doctor gets into the struggle because the parents get mad at the doctor. "Can't you do something?" Sometimes the priest gets. I'm an Episcopal, so we call them priests and rulers and whatnot. But involved for sure, and they're saying you got to be tough. If he were generation, he would be beaten. Control themselves. They're treated as if they won't control themselves. And that's the key element that distinguishes the moral diagnosis from the medical diagnosis. In the moral diagnosis, it's won't. And so we're gonna help you by punishing you, humiliating you, beating you, shaming you, sequestering you, as you get older, imprisoning you. But the medical diagnosis says, no, this isn't won't, this is can't. And that's when everything can change. When someone comes along and says, wait a minute, time out, let's stop this daily struggle, let's stop this daily routine merry-go-round of accusation, recrimination, retribution, punishment, so on and so forth, that is absolutely fracturing our family and making us all but hating each other. Let's let the light of science shine upon this dark dungeon of morality, of so-called morality, of lack of willpower. And when we shine the light of science into that dungeon, all those terrible shadows disappear. And what we find is a genetic predisposition to having trouble to controlling thoughts, feelings, impulses, and telling someone with ADHD to try harder is like telling someone who's nearsighted to squint harder. It misses the basic biological element. So the beginning of change comes with diagnosis. And if Jimmy can get diagnosed, but then once you've diagnosed him, okay, now you've got to tell it to the sibling. The siblings, oh yeah, another excuse. This is probably mom because she's the bleeding heart and she's always, she won't be. So what does this give Jimmy? Carte blanche, do whatever he wants. Was this ADHD thing a big fat excuse for getting out, for being such a brat, for being such a pain in the neck? Things down and explain it to them because they're very resentful. He has been getting all this extra attention, all this extra time from parents to no avail, and he just won't come around. And so you have to really explain to them that this is a biological condition, probably inherited it from mom or dad or grandpa or grandma, and that Jimmy can't give him an excuse, but it does give an explanation other than his being a bad seed, other than his being possessed by the devil, the things they used to say in centuries gone by. And honestly, these kids would be shackled and put in horrible asylums for the severe ADHD. Instead of that, it is according to his wiring. And then when you explain it to them, and you can't do it in one sitting, but the analogy I've used many times, the race bicycle brakes up. He's got a Ferrari brain, but his brakes aren't strong enough to control it. His brakes aren't strong enough to help him slow himself down. And so we need to work on his brakes. And they'll say, oh, baloney, baloney, baloney. But you give him more evidence, you coach him on it more. You say to them, if you have an issue, we'll help you with your issue. But it begins in understanding, and punishing him and taunting him and ridiculing him is just breaking him down. And you don't want to break down your brother, do you? They'll say, yeah, we do want to break. But gradually, as you appeal to their selves, you can repair the broken connection. You can repair the relationship. You can bring out in them, all relationships are ambivalent, but the part of them that actually does care about Jimmy, and you appeal to them, and over time, you then create a treatment plan, not only for Jimmy, but for the whole family. Because the chances are mom and dad have some repair work to do. The chances are also that mom or dad has the condition, and that their relationship is suffering not only because of the disruptions that Jimmy has caused, but because one of them has ADHD. And what happens in couples where one has ADHD and the other doesn't, let's say the husband has it and the wife doesn't, what happens over time is a parent-child dynamic develops, where the non-ADD spouse, in this case, the mom, the wife, comes to think that her ADD husband is like a fourth child. She's picking up after him. She's reminding him. She's dealing with his misdeeds, with his overlooking of things, and she thinks, "My gosh, I've got a fourth child," and that is not a romantic proposition. So you begin to see their intimate relationship disappear. You begin to see them alienate from one another, because who wants to be around a scolding mother, or who wants to be around a wayward child? And the marriage often is itself in big trouble, or indeed on the rocks. So in comes this powerful diagnosis, which is a powerful explanation. Not only do you begin to help Jimmy and the siblings understand that Jimmy is not a terminally obnoxious mistake, but that Jimmy indeed, if we can strengthen his brakes, is a champion in the making. And then mom and dad begin to, with the help of, somebody who understands all of this, begin to talk to each other and understand each other. And instead of blaming and accusing and resenting, they say, oh gosh, you've got the same thing Jimmy's got. And that's why your career isn't thriving. That's why you haven't taken off. That's why everyone says you have so much talent, but you can't deliver on it. That's why you've been so frustrated and wondering, why do people who aren't as smart as I am do much better than I do? Well, it's because of undiagnosed ADHD. And all of this can happen, by the way, within weeks. I've seen it hundreds of times in my own practice. You come in, the child gets identified and diagnosed, then the couple, whoever has it in the couple, gets identified and diagnosed. And it's like, oh my gosh, it's like the tundra melting. It's like the sun coming up, and suddenly all this frozen ground begins to melt, and you begin to see, little buds start growing, you begin to see fertility, you begin to see growth, you begin to see productivity, you begin to see love and genuine connection, genuine vitamin C. And it just is the sunshine over the plains, and it's a beautiful sight. And you know, and it's real. It's not fairyland I'm talking about. This is very real. This diagnosis is so powerful. It is absolutely life-changing. For Jimmy, he won't have to go through his life being punished, misunderstood. You know, sometimes these punishments are awful. I don't know if you know of Dave Pilkey over there, but Captain Underpants is a big children's book series over. And Dave Pilkey have become friends with, he has ADHD, the author. And when he went to school, he went to a Lutheran school in the Midwest. He was paddled with a board almost every day from grade all the way through high school. They would paddle high school students. That was his school experience. He was brutalized going through school. Why? Because he had the ability to make people laugh. Well, rather than becoming a horribly bitter, you know, reject from the world, Dave Pilkey took his creative ability and became a world famous author of children's stories, now sold over 80 million copies. But for every one Dave Pilkey who transforms that childhood trauma into beautiful art, many, many, many more don't. And they crash and burn. They're the addicts, the people in jail, the unemployed. The consequences are terrible. But on the good side, once we diagnose Jimmy and we diagnose Dad, and we bring in the sunshine of knowledge, the sunshine of science, and we say this is not a moral failing, this is a biological difference. And then we have interventions and structure, exercise, just the explanation itself. And then medication will help about 80% of the time. So, you know, that's a pretty good odds. In my own case, medication does not help. I rely on non-medication treatments. You know, I've been lucky. I went to schools that, you know, really had wonderful teachers, and I can honestly say I never had a bad teacher. I had wonderful teachers, and I excelled in school, even though I have ADHD and dyslexia. But my story is unusual. That's not usually what happens. But 80% track record is pretty good, you know. So, and when I say the medication will work, I mean it will address target symptoms with no side effects other than appetite suppression without unwanted weight loss. And that's a very achievable goal. So you take a family that has been struggling, that has been my old teacher used to say life is loss, you know, and you know, life is hard, but uh, say you want to minimize suffering, necessary suffering around it. But the kind of struggles that occur with undiagnosed ADHD, that is unnecessary suffering. And thankfully, we have the knowledge and the tools to address it, reduce it, and then over time, that about doctors who have to deliver news. I deliver good news. My challenge is to get the word out there. You know, Finian mentioned he signed up on TikTok. I just had this amazing ADD friendly format. The family impact, the school impact, the marital couples impact of this condition, undiagnosed, is horribly destructive. Diagnosed is wonderfully pro constructive, repairing, and all some of these 80 innovators, the pioneers, the development visionaries, the seers, the artists, but broken in school until the diagnosis. I probably will stop just left over from earlier today, as well as some in this. So let me stop there. Let me just end by saying it's a good news. Learn about it as simple as the checklist of symptoms, but it is not, some recherche neuroscience, conundrum. Once you understand it, you can see it everywhere, and it's way more common than most people think. You don't have to be failing to have ADHD. I was always first in my class. You have to be impaired, unexplained underachievement, and you can be underachieving and be first in your class. There are Nobel Prize winners who have this condition, self-made millionaires and billionaires. I already mentioned your Richard Branson and many others. So don't be afraid of the diagnosis, but do get help from someone who knows what he or she is doing. Unfortunately, there aren't that many clinicians out there who really understand this, particularly from a strength-based point of view. So, you can go to my books, Delivered from Distraction. You can go to obviously ADHD Ireland has resources. Talk to people like Ken and Finian, and get the right help. And as I say, celebrate life with this condition as opposed to suffering with it undiagnosed. Also, let me give you my email if any of you should want to email me. My email address is drhallowell@gmail.com. That's drhallowell@gmail.com. So let me stop there, and Mr. Ken, tell me what you want me to do.
We're going to answer lots of questions now. Just to let you say, my internet's been coming and going for the last half hour, so I drop out, Nicola will drop in and answer loads of questions. This question is actually not a setup, it's a genuine question that actually came in earlier. It just touches on the couple of things that you said earlier. And it's from Sean McKeown. Says, "Hi Ned, my son was diagnosed with ADHD in the summer. And the first thing I did was read your book, Driven to Distraction. And in there I met myself, and last week I too was diagnosed with ADD. Can you give me some advice on how I should talk to my son about ADHD and my own experiences? By the way, listening to you today is like having you inside my head, LOL."
Yeah, talk to your son, in a celebratory way. Hey, son, we've got the same kind of brain, and it's a race car brain with bicycle brakes, and you're lucky you found out sooner than I did. So we can start working on your brakes sooner. But I don't want you to ever believe people who tell you you're slow or bad or disorganized. Yeah, you may have trouble paying attention to boring details, but boy, oh boy, you're going to come up with the ideas that will save the world. So, let's ride this bucking bronco together, and let's learn how to have it serve us, and I'll help you and you help me, and it's a real thing you can bond together with. Don't tiptoe around it. Don't treat it as if it's something you have to keep secret or hide or feel ashamed of. Not at all. Celebrate it. When someone says to me, "My son has ADHD," I say, "Wow, that's great." And they look at me like, "What?" Yeah, it's great. Sure, right now it's probably really tough, but work with me and it'll turn into something wonderful. Now, please don't misunderstand. Some people take me to task and they say, I don't acknowledge the downside. This condition can ruin your life, no doubt about it, but it doesn't have to. And that's why I say you get the right kind of help. It can enhance your life, indeed make your life. And, I'm in the business of trying to help people do that. So have fun with your son and begin to unwrap your gifts together.
Cool. Well, that's very good information. Does Nicola have a question, or does she need to unmute?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey.
Yeah, I do. Yay. We do have one, and I have read a few reports on this, so I'd be interested in your comments on this, Ned. I've discovered that it seems my mother has inattentive ADD and married a narcissist, and went on to have narcissist bunch of boys. And then recently they got to and then recently I got diagnosed with combined ADD. For my sanity, I've cut off my brothers, and as my parents are dead now, and because they just get into my head and play me like a rag doll. Have you any advice for people in my circumstances who get taken advantage of by powerful narcissists and psychopaths?
Well, first of all, congratulations on being here today. I mean, you look like a very well put together woman, and you are obviously very smart. And boy, you have weathered storms. And by the way, that's a quality of us ADDers. We are amazingly resilient. You can knock us down, 25 times, and we'll get up 26. So, and you have a look in your eye that I can tell you've got, incredible vitality, but you've also been hurt. The narcissism is a horrible, horrible, horrible condition. And, the fact that you were cursed by having a father who was like that, and then brothers as well. Oh my gosh, my heart goes out to you. I hope your mom was able to be loving. I hope you could get love somewhere. But a basic definition of narcissism is the inability to love, and then coupled with a tendency to demand love from other people. So your dad was probably always asking you to adore him and never giving you anything in return. And it's just amazing that you're sitting here as healthy as you are.
Ned,
so
that was actually an anonymous attendee. That wasn't me. That was actually an anonymous attendee. Because I was wondering, what were you taking me up on that personally?
So you weren't
Sorry, no, I was reading a question from an anonymous attendee.
Oh my gosh. Well, okay. Well, I still mean all the things I said about you.
I'll take them all.
I'm glad you didn't have to go through all of that. So the person that I'm talking to you is, my best advice is to look for healthy connection elsewhere. I had a tumultuous childhood myself, and the reason I'm here with you today is because I found healthy connection elsewhere. And that's the beauty of connection, wherever you find it. And it's far more potent than disconnection. A little bit of connection can cancel out a whole lot of disconnection. So, but you do need to find it. A friend, a teacher, where you work. Earlier, I extolled a dog. By all means, everyone should have a dog. If you must have a cat, okay. And I know you Brits love cats, but in any case, a pet can make a big difference. But however you get Vitamin Connect, because it can solve the deprivation and hardship of all kinds of trauma, not overnight. See, that's another thing. It doesn't work instantaneously the way everyone wants whatever intervention you've got to work instantaneously. But over time, the power of connection is unmatched. Nothing beats it.
Thank you.
Thanks for that. Obviously, just we do need to pick you up ever so slightly because there's a few things coming in chat in terms of Brits. We are running this as the ADHD Foundation, which is Liverpool, and ADHD Ireland, and we're a separate country, and we will stand up proudly for that. Obviously,
I don't mean to say you are the same as the Brits. I'm sorry.
No, we're doing with the Brits, but not.
What's the nickname for the Irish?
Brilliant. If I could just do the next question then. This is from Louise. It says, "Hi, don't get me wrong. I love being me and don't want to change who I am. But it also see my impulsivity, how destructive my impulsivity can be, and seeing and has been, and now my daughter, who's only a young teen yet, and she's looking to go down the same road. And I don't want her to go down the same hard road. So what's a good way to control our impulsivity?"
It's a wonderful question. It is the most difficult symptom in the world of ADHD to control. I would begin with your daughter by just sitting down and talking about it, saying you and I have weak breaks, and try to keep it in that morally neutral weak break analogy, as opposed to the devil is in you or something like that. But talk about it with each other, and then begin to look at it. What triggers? When are you at your most impulsive? I mean, the most obvious is that I've had a few drinks. So, then you want to be careful when you're drinking. Or, when I'm feeling stressed, I'll lash out. So that's when you want to really put on your brakes or leave the room, before you say something or do something impulsive that you regret. And remember, the positive side of impulsivity is creativity. So it's not an unmitigated curse. So what you want to work on is magnifying the positive. Get yourself a creative outlet. Make sure we're like, we ADDers, we're like cows. We need to be milked. We need to have our creative outlet, and then work on your breaks. Try to identify your triggers. Try to, when you're in a situation where you might insult someone, if you're in this country, if you're at a cocktail party and Trump comes up, I just try to leave, because I don't want to get in a big fight, because it's just not worth it, unless everyone in the room agrees with me, and then we can have at it. But so you want to try to uh, know yourself well enough that you can begin to try to control yourself, and then you and your daughter can laugh about it. You want to, I've done some and said some very inappropriate things, and I laugh about them now. I don't feel ashamed, as just part of who I am. Said would become completely unspontaneous robot.
Yeah, I just have one here, Annette. This question is, how do you manage the diagnosed adolescent in the 18 to 24-year-old group who doesn't want to know about the condition or is unwilling to seek professional help guidance?
And that comes up all the time, and particularly among males. And their refrain is, I'd rather fail doing it my way than succeed with. So what you do is you just provide information in whatever you can, be gentle, don't turn to a struggle, don't give them negative conditioning around it. And life, will increase the pain to the point where, with any luck, he'll ask for help. You hate to see him suffer unnecessarily, but you can't force someone to agree to help. But you can frame it in such a way that he doesn't feel ashamed. Often the reason they won't accept help is they want to say, nothing wrong with me. Well, you talk to me and I'll tell you there's a lot right with you. If you have this condition, you think the mental illness, I think it's one that needs to be controlled, just like curly hair. So, you offer, but don't push. You educate as best you can, and you let time pass. This too will pass.
Okay, thanks very much for that. Can we go next to Terry for the next question, please?
Yeah, this is one on eating disorders. That's that one. So what supports are available to help create support structures and systems for managing a healthy diet for people with ADHD and eating disorders? Maybe that's one for Harriet.
Well, do we want Finian to respond to
Finian
that?
as well, yeah, if he was available to.
Or Harriet?
I suppose, like, in terms of eating structures, I was thinking about that question earlier, and I think that really a dietitian can be very helpful in terms of creating regular eating patterns. And when somebody has an eating disorder, having a kind of to see what way the person is eating, try to establish kind of regular eating can be very helpful. A rule of thumb that I would always go by for regular eating is a rule of 3 meals, 3 snacks, not going longer than 3 hours without eating. And that's kind of an easy thing to remember if you're thinking about how to structure somebody's eating. But that's from the eating disorder perspective. So I don't know, maybe Finian has other ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, no, I'd agree with you, Harriet. And following on from what Ned was saying as well, I think like a lot of children, youths, adolescents go through a difficult period up until, particularly until their mid-20s. Sometimes the parents and families suffer more from their condition than the actual individuals do. My best advice, and again, it's never an easy journey if someone gets a diagnosis of ADD or ADHD. Seek help is my primary advice for people, and go to an array of professionals, medics, therapists or whatever, until you find the right fit for your child that works for them, whether it's a diagnosis. There are some medications that can help with the drive to eat nowadays. As I say, I wouldn't recommend them this alone, but as I say, seek help from an array of professionals. It might be a very expensive journey, especially in Ireland, but as I say, my best advice to people is to seek help and see what works for your child.
Again, if I could just maybe jump in there in terms of the ADHD side of that question, because if Terry didn't ask that question, I was going to ask that question from Tara. And she was saying what supports are available to help create support structures and systems for managing a healthy diet for people with ADHD and eating disorders. I'm going to be honest, I don't know of any structures and supports out there, particularly for people with ADHD and eating disorders, which is why obviously we you know, when we talked about this, we said, let's get Harry to do the presentation. But I don't know if, you know, if someone came in to us the morning and said, I have ADHD, I'm developing an eating disorder, is there anything formal there for me? I'd say, not that I know of.
No, I mean, I think I'm answering another comment there to somebody, I think a doctor, and I was saying that probably in CAMS, they're probably more likely to diagnose, to have the kind of dual diagnosis. If somebody has an eating disorder, they might also be able to diagnose if someone has ADHD, but in adult services, I wouldn't say, I don't know, I don't think so. So I think you're right, I don't think there are. But I think once it's identified, having that kind of, you know, kind of knowing that basic structure, as Finian said, you know, I suppose I would say that if the resources aren't there in the community services, kind of trying to form some kind of multidisciplinary team around the person can be helpful, whether that's a GP, a dietitian, you know, whatever works. It's trial and error often.
Well, no, I mean, you're right. I mean, some people put in, you know, CAMS should be able to do something like this, but there isn't that official link between ADHD and eating disorders at the moment. And it's, you know, we're here, you're there, and there isn't really that link in the middle. And that's something, you know, as a, you know, ourselves and between ourselves, over the years, we need to come up with an answer. Just seeing maybe Nicola might have a question, or am I?
Yeah, I have one. Well, we see it here all the time when it comes to younger kids having gone through the children's services. They have been medicated by their parents. They go through school. They get to a certain age in their teens, so they're 15, 16, and they're too cool for school. They don't want to take their meds. If they're lucky, they get through, finish secondary school. But when they start into college, they're still at home. The parents are, this is a whole new cohort of people that we're actually working with at the moment, kind of 18 to 24-year-olds are still living at home. The parents they're dependent on the parents, but they're not on meds. They won't go back on them, even though the parents had seen and the kids themselves had seen such a massive difference in the way medication had worked for them. How can you turn around the thought and the thinking on a 17 to 21-year-old that if you go back, this will help you long term? Because this child's basically, he's just going into college now, and he's failing all around him, but he's stubborn. This is stubborn coming through. He doesn't want to have any help at all.
Are you asking me?
I'm asking you. Sorry, Ned. Yes, please.
By the way, Nicola, I'm just looking at you thinking, I'm so glad she didn't have a narcissistic father.
I may have come across one or two in my lifetime, but no. And just to follow up while you did bring it up, that anonymous attendee actually came up and said, when you asked about mother was a nice mother, she turned, or she, I don't know, turned around and said that the mother kind of was more kind of stuck in the romance of the father, and that there was no real relationship. She was a lost daughter. So there you go. That's one of many relationships, I'm sure. But anyway, they are out there. We know that. But,
so often.
Okay, you can answer your question.
So your question about it is very common that it's usually males, young men, that refrain of I'd rather fail my way than succeed with help. And so my approach is, you know, I always put the person with the condition in charge. I'm not here to persuade someone, beg someone to take medication. I'm here to And also, you know, people ask me, do you believe in medication? And my answer is, it's not a religious principle. You know, it's a tool in the toolbox, and it can be helpful. So I try to provide these guys with the facts, and then I try to point out the trick their mind is playing on them because of their conditioning, because of the way males are brought up in your country, in my country. There's sort of a strong pressure to be independent, self-sufficient, and certainly not to rely on mental health services. I mean, there's just still out of bounds of your typical male, you know, pride boundary. And so I try to point that out. I say, don't be the victim of the way men have been conditioned for centuries in a way that's stunted their growth. You know, and I try to, you know, I talk about my own experience, and I try to soften them up. I say, you know, I'm not here to persuade you, but I am here to help you make a decision that's rooted in your best interests and medical fact. The medical facts are incontrovertible. These medications are very safe and very effective as long as they're supervised by a doctor who knows what he or she is doing. There's no doubt about that. So their fear that it's going to take away their creativity, or that it's going to stunt their growth, or they're going to become addicted, those are simply factually incorrect. And you can drive it home by just saying, if it does anything you don't like, if you turn purple, you just stop it and it goes away. So it's not like surgery. It's not, you know, irreversible. It's a trial of medication is just that. It's like trying on a pair of shoes. If it doesn't fit, you send it back. You know, then you're in the realm of trying to, you know, deal with the irrational fears and feelings that I somehow reduce myself if I accept help. And I say, you know, honest to goodness, would you say that about eyeglasses? Am I less of a person because I'm wearing eyeglasses? Wouldn't I be kind of foolish to rely on squinting instead of eyeglasses? And, you know, I push these metaphors that really are true. And usually they come around, because then I say, you know, another analogy I use, untreated ADD is like driving on square wheels. You get there because you're so determined, you're so forever foot go, you've expended many more units of effort than you needed to. And the meds could give you round wheels. And wow, wouldn't that be great to go through a day on round wheels? And they hear enough of this, and then I, you know, tell them about many other stories, and usually they'll say, let's just give it a try. Because I say, what have you got to lose? You know, one day, you know, and the best that'll happen is it'll change your life forever. The worst that'll happen is you say you hate it and don't want to take it again. So again, it's not a selling job, it's an educating job. And never into the position where you're begging them to do it, because again, that's inviting a struggle, and they'll dig in around how they will beneath them or something like that. The good news is the meds usually work. The bad news is most people of all ages are afraid of them and are woefully misinformed.
Okay, well, we're actually just running up against time here. So I've one more question. Now I can come back to that in just 1 second. But before I just wrap up, I just want to say thank you to everybody from ADHD Ireland, as Nicola, Tricia, Anne, and Terry for doing all the work behind the scenes to keep things going. Obviously, thanks to the ADHD Foundation, who came on board as our partner. Thanks to our earlier panelists, Amanda Kirby, Emma Weaver, Harriet, Fintan Fallion, and everybody's come along. But most thank you for coming along and attending this today. But before we go, just one question I want to take from Jennifer Pender, and I'd like you to answer this from a professional rather than a personal experience. And I'll go first to Fillion with this, and the question is, does Trump have ADHD?
Is that for me, Ken?
Yeah, you go to you first.
He's got something, and he keeps getting elected for it. I don't know what it is, Ken, to be honest.
So you're not giving me a clinical diagnosis of anything?
No, but if he comes into my office, I'll give him a diagnosis and get to work on him.
As a true blue American, what's your opinion on, does Trump have ADHD?
I think we know the answer to this already, Ned.
Well, but you guys can decide for yourselves.
So you get a vote on next week is the thing.
Yes, exactly. Next day.
And I probably should just like one of the
Let,
questions.
let me just say to all of you. What did you say?
No, go ahead.
I just wanted to say to all of you, thank you. You've been a wonderful audience. I love the fact that I was able to go to Ireland via Zoom, and as I said to you before, I love your country, and thank you for your attention. And I hope what I've had to say has been useful, and bless you all. You're a wonderful group.
Thank you very much. And with that, I'd like to say thank you to everybody for coming along tonight. Again, a big thanks to the AD Foundation. Thanks to all our panelists. And very importantly, thanks to you. It's been great to get such a positive message about ADHD. And we look forward to talking to you all again very near in the future. Thank you very much and good night.
Good night.